Hello and welcome. Today I have something very special. A few weeks ago I did a presentation on scripting, and as an example I showed you my ghost box, but I didn't perform it. And in the comments down below Blaze said, why didn't you perform that? Well, when I do it in a show, which is rare, and I'll explain why it's rare in a few minutes. When I do it in a show, it's kind of a running gag where I place it and I check it and I place it and I check it, and nothing happens until the very end. And that's important. It's an important detail to the presentation, which I really, in this kind of environment, I really can't do. And that's why I didn't perform it. But I would like to show you the same box today, give you a little bit of the history. It's Halloween. It's the perfect time to do it. And let me explain a little bit of the ideology as well behind it. So I'm going to give you the history of the ghost box. It's also called the Astro Cabinet. It's also called the Pogo ball. It goes by a lot of names. The one that's available on the market today is this one right here. I think it's a very good one. It's very nicely made. I think this is one of the better varieties that I've seen. I've actually sold 3 of these things on, not that particular one, but whenever there's a new one that comes out, I buy it. So the only one that I didn't get was the Milson Worth, which I think that's probably the best made. But I've sold 3 of them, and that's the latest one. Now, the one that I currently use is this one right here. And as I've said, presentation is everything. You'll notice that in this one, there is a ball, there is a large ball, and a glass. That is the way it is traditionally done, a large ball and a glass. But that's not the history of the effect. Let me give you the history of the effect and explain why I like to do it this way. Now, there's a hotel here in Maryland. There's a lot of hotels in the world that are haunted. But in Maryland, we have a particularly haunted hotel. And as the story goes, there was a girl that was out playing. Her parents were vacationing at this hotel. She was out playing, and she drowned tragically. She left her belongings behind. One of the things that belonged to her was a doll. Now, her parents said that they would take the doll and move it out of the crib and keep it where they could see it because they wanted to remember their little girl. But every morning when they woke up, the doll had returned to its crib. Now, these things happen in the dark. Now, let me explain a little bit about the ghost box. Back in the 1800s, the late 1800s, spiritualists used to use what was called a spirit cabinet. They would enclose themselves as the medium in a dark, small room within a room where the seance was taking place. And the reason they did this was to conserve energy. The energy would build up in the spirit cabinet. Manifestations would occur. Now, back in these days, you had a lot of physical manifestations. Tambourines ringing, bells clanging, knocks on the walls, this type of thing. You still have physical manifestations today, but to a lesser degree. Most mediums today are channeling or conveying information, not so much displaying physical prowess or physical apparitions. But in the late 1800s, they did. Now, the spirit cabinet evolved over time, and many magicians, notably the Davenports, were beginning to do spirit cabinet effects. Now, let me tell you a little bit about ideologically why I run against this type of thing. I was doing an illusion show back in the 90s, and I was doing a sword cabinet effect. If I just did the sword cabinet, I'd have been okay, but if you know me, you know I don't just do things. I like to do presentations. So in my sword cabinet effect, at the time I was very interested in Native American history, Native American culture. So I was tying a lot of that into my show. I did a loader bowl routine based on Native American themes, and my sword cabinet was based on the ghost dance. After a show one day, a Native American came up to me and said, "You know, I enjoyed the show, but I'd like you to tone down the ghost dance." He said, "I don't know if you understand this, but the ghost dance is an active religion. It's actively part of our religious experience today." I did not realize that. Out of respect for this person, out of respect for the culture, I pulled the routine out of my show. Now, I have investigated the claims of spiritualism and I found them to be true. And even if I didn't, I would have respect for those that practice spiritualism. When you get into this kind of effect, you're getting into spiritualism just a little bit. And my thinking is you got to tread very carefully. But in 1910, Faye, one of my favorite historical performers, was the first to perform a dancing hank. She did it as a spirit manifestation. Dancing handkerchief. Later, you might remember, you might know if you know your magic history, Harry Blackstone popularized the dancing handkerchief. When it started out, now if you remember Harry Blackstone's dancing hank, he ties a handkerchief, he borrows a handkerchief from an audience member, he ties a knot in it, and it dances all over the stage. It's a beautiful effect. When he started doing the effect, he did it with what was called a Cassadaga cabinet, or a ghost box. The Cassadaga cabinet was based on Cassadaga, Florida, which is a very popular spiritualist community. He intended it to be a spiritualist effect. Faye intended it to be a spiritualistic effect. Basically, the Cassadaga box, or the Cassadaga cabinet, was the forerunner of the ghost box. In 1939, Sefalaljia, I think I pronounced that correctly, Sefalaljia was popularized, let me get this right for you, close-up one-man spirit cabinet routine developed by Stewart James and published in the Jinx, issue 69, December 2nd, 1939. So Stewart James was the first to do this type of effect. And by the way, Sefalaljia is available by Abbotts Magic if you want the original, the forerunner of the ghost box. Now, if you take the dancing handkerchief, the Cassadaga cabinet, Sefalaljia, now you have this. Basically, what happened was a dealer saw the Sefalaljia cabinet, decided to make it a little bit more streamlined for the mainstream magic audience, and that's where the ghost box or the ghost cabinet comes from. So, the ghost box really evolved from Sefalaljia, which evolved from the Cassadaga cabinet, which evolved from Faye's effect, which evolved from the spirit cabinet back in the late 19th century. By the way, today, the latest innovation on this effect was by Dean. It's called the Dean's box. You might not associate, because what Dean is doing is he's doing rope effects within the cabinet, which is really cool. But it's basically the same idea. So back to my original story. Parents would want to keep this doll separate to remember their daughter. But every morning when they woke up, they would find that the doll had returned to its crib. Like that. Folks, please subscribe down below. Please comment. I love your comments. And happy Halloween. See you next time.